Hey everyone, it's Kristone Capistrano. We're now here for part 2 of our portrait drawing workshop. So last lesson we talked about outlines and angles and proportion. For today, we'll be focusing on the tone. So we'll be talking about shading, especially for cross-hatching and highlighting in a drawing. So here we go, let's go. So have a range of pencils that you can use from, even a mechanical pencil if you have. Also, very important, have an eraser at hand in case you make a mistake, and also for shading and for highlights, also a sharpener. There's nothing worse than a blunt pencil for drawings. This is a drawing I prepared earlier, it's of my dad. This drawing started just like the drawing we're working on now, but this is maybe an hour, 2 hours afterwards. So this is with a lot of shading, a lot of blending. I'll be covering a few techniques when we do the shading, but what I like to focus on are the shadows. So when you start, you have to find where the darkest sections are first and go from there. Try not to smudge with your thumb, and I know a lot of you will be very surprised. The reason is our fingers have oils on the skin. So when you use this to smudge, the oil sort of messes up the drawing. It makes it very muddy. When I work on this, instead of smudging with my finger, I'll be doing something called cross-hatching. So hatching and cross-hatching is very simple. So hatching basically means using the same line over and over again. And if you want it darker, you do more lines. If you want it softer, less lines. So if you can have a look at these sections, it all consists of different lines. Now cross-hatching is basically the same as hatching, but having intersecting lines going opposite ways. So instead of blending, this is a new technique that I want you guys to have to try. I want you guys to try at home. Whenever I draw, I usually like to blend and shade in the left eye first, followed by the right eye. Left eye, right eye, nose and mouth, then everything else follows. But now it's okay to start drawing as if you're writing in terms of the way you hold a pencil. Because some of the harder details can be more easily drawn if you hold the pencil in different ways. Another tip that I can give you is the way that you move the lines really helps build the shape of whatever you're drawing. So if I'm drawing something round, I would draw the lines almost in a round way. So at this point, I'm starting to draw my brother's cheek. So in order to do the cheek, I would start to hatch in the direction of the cheek. Yeah, because you can shade it going downwards, but instead I would shade it like a curve. And that really helps build the shape and the structure of the cheek. So one of my final tips is that whenever you draw using a white piece of paper, usually if you see an empty white space, that means it has to be super white, super bright. And I'm looking at my photograph here and there's nothing really that's absolutely white. So having said that, in order to have a pretty good solid drawing of the tone of the shading, I'm basically hatching everything in a very light manner like this. In a curved way that captures the curve of the face. Even the background, if you can notice. And this will really help push the face forward and it will help it look more realistic. If you want to improve as a drawer, you have to be very objective and step back now and again and ask yourself honestly, what is working, what looks good, and what doesn't look good. And you have to ask yourself why. I'm looking at the cheek and it's looking a tad flat because of the way I hatched it. Instead of the curve thing that I told you about earlier, I sort of did just diagonal lines like that. So one way for me to improve this is to do more hatching. This section here is a bit flat. So if I had another 5 minutes, I would make it a bit more rounder, so a bit more shading to capture the section beneath the eyebrow. So what's working here is that there's shadows inside the shadows inside the shadows. So for a drawing to look really spectacular, you have to try to find the shadows in between the shadows or the highlights underneath the highlights. And even in the highlights, there's shadows in them. So it's very complex and complicated, but it's something that comes with practice.